Welcome everyone. In this podcast episode, we are going to talk about how to manage time effectively as a researcher and how is it to form a spin-off company from research findings. As a guest, we have a researcher extraordinaire. After finishing his PhD related to sedentary behavior in the end of 2016 with 4 highly applauded publications, he became first the research manager and then the director of Active Life Lab in southeastern Finland, University of Applied Sciences. He has received 7 grants totaling over 1.3 million euros and has published 36 papers with over 2,000 citations. At the same time, while working full-time, he has also worked as an entrepreneur and chief scientific officer at Fibion Inc. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome our guest, Dr. Arto Pesola. Welcome, Arto, and thank you for taking time for this podcast.
Thanks a lot, Olli. Pleasure to be here.
Yeah, so should we start about your interesting professional journey? How did you end up to this point?
Well, you described pretty well my journey already. So, well, my career is not very long, so yet. So I finished my PhD in the end of 2016, and I did my master's thesis. It was in 2011, 2012, around that time, and at that time I started to get interested in this research. Well, let's say I did like 5 years bachelor and master studies in total, and 4 years of that I had no idea what to do in the future, and I even wasn't very interested in this field. I thought that what's the value in here? What can I do? But then during the 5th year, I got very interested in. I got into the science, so to say. I got an idea what is research, what are different research setups, and what kind of problems you can solve with research. And when doing my master thesis, I got even more excited about this, and then it was very easy to continue in the PhD. And the PhD took 5.5 years, and after that, my former colleague told me about this position in Active Life Lab, and I started as a project manager, and then now I'm the director of this lab. So, and I have been working in this position for 4 years now after my PhD. So I really don't have a lot of experience from working life, but getting there.
Yeah, so that's actually interesting. I haven't heard. I know Arto pretty well. We have been colleagues for a long time, and I've been even living in the. Arto has kind of 2 houses or 2 buildings. I've been living in his neighbor in the same yard for over a year. So I know him pretty well. So you said that you were not that interested in science and you just got excited in the last year of your studies. Did you have any plans? You were playing ice hockey when you were younger, and did you think that you would become a coach or some kind of exercise physiologist for a team, or what was your idea?
Yeah, that's a good point. I really didn't know. I was doing work with personal trainers, giving some lectures for them, and somehow my idea of this well-being field was very limited. I thought somehow I think I thought that it's mainly about coaching and this kind of physical well-being, and I didn't have too much knowledge of, say, corporate wellness, or not to talk about like more broad well-being programs or healthcare or things like that. And after kind of entering the science zone, so to say, when starting to read the papers about prevention and the importance of countermeasures for these diseases, I got the idea of, or got excited about the importance of our work. And before that, it was mainly playing ice hockey and lifting weights. And so the meaning, like the core meaning, well, of course, that's a different story. Of course, it's sport and physical activity is important of itself, but for the society and for the public, like there are so many big things that we can promote with our work. Somehow I got a better idea of those. And I must also say to the listeners that this whole thing started from Olli's PhD project. So I did my master's thesis to your PhD project, which was about daily muscle inactivity. And that's where I got very interested in the sedentary behavior field. One thing there was that this was also a new approach to physical activity, this sedentary behavior, because people and researchers were not talking only about purposeful physical activity or exercise. So we were talking about conscious and also unconscious physical activities throughout the day, which are very, very achievable for everyone. And at that time, and still, they seem to be pretty effective for prevention also. So this kind of I got very interested in this kind of new perspective on physically active lifestyle. So that was also one thing.
Yeah, maybe I can tell a little bit background story here, that I was doing my PhD as a part-time work. I was working as a product manager for a company who was doing mainly EMG devices. So I didn't have too much time to put to my PhD. So my strategy was to find other talented people to recruit into our project. So part of my work was drinking coffee in the cafe of the university, and then I started chatting with people who were there. I didn't even know. I think I didn't know you. I just started talking, and then I introduced our idea. I asked, like, have you done your master's already? And then I got him interested, and we got the really brilliant person to work in our project, and then it started from there. So maybe a tip for a PhD, that you can also just try to find great people to your team, and they will help you.
That's true, and I'm not angry at all for you, because it was a very good decision starting to work for your project. And even though you were using the young young students for your to help in your PhD, but that's how you do it, and that's the right thing to do. And you also got me interested in this topic. It was maybe 2 hours coffee break or lunch break one time. I remember that. So we had very good discussions, and getting the idea and perspective from more senior researcher. Well, you were also a youngster at that time, but anyway,
You're very beginner.
yeah. But still,
and
a couple of years ahead of me, which is a very long period in that part of your career.
And I think the main point was trying to find incentives for you and for others, that how would you benefit? What would be your advantage coming to our project? And that was basically that we had a really good data set that you could get. If you'd make a project by yourself, you would need to collect all the data. So I was trying to kind of find always a win-win situation. And I think with 4 different persons, we were able to find a win-win, and we had actually a really good team in our research project that way.
Yeah, you had an innovative idea to measure actually muscle activity during 24 hours. You already had data, and then there was new literature coming all the time about the sedentary behavior field. So
Yeah.
I think it was pretty easy for me to enter this field, and I was very excited.
The innovative idea, I think it was Professor Taija Finni and Professor Keijo Häkkinen who got the idea, but I was following, so all credits to them. But if we move on to you are now working in an applied university versus like a university as such, and maybe to our listeners in Finland, applied universities are quite different. They don't do that much research, at least traditionally, and they put much more effort into teaching and kind of, yeah. Maybe you can tell more about differences, but how is it different in relation to research and funding and working there, applied university versus university?
Yeah, I was when starting in my work in applied university. I was very kind of skeptical, and it's a pretty typical case when you have been working in academia. Well, I'm still working in academia, but say more basic research. Um, you need to play with very strictly with those rules and kind of the academic with the rules of academic world. In University of Applied Sciences, of course, we play with the same rules, but we think about the implementation much more, and we prepare the projects with companies. We have like ongoing debate with the healthcare, like the local healthcare all the time. For example, my lab does a lot of collaboration with the local preventing healthcare, where we try to prevent type 2 diabetic cases in South Savonia. And we do data collection from these people. It's not a very kind of it's very applied research setup. It's not controlled trial, but it's like ecological data collection. But anyway, we get really good evidence all the time, and then we modify the prevention and counseling process when we get the data. So it's an ongoing development process. So in basic university, you probably wouldn't put so much time on that kind of applied work, but you would need to have a very strict research setup without too much hassle. That's like part of the normal healthcare work. And of course, the grants we are applying, I'll be applying like basic research and applied research grants, but also this kind of development grants with companies. And in University of Applied Sciences, those grants form a much larger share of the total budget than in the basic research university. So I have actually been pretty fascinated about the kind of possibilities in this implementation and development field. We apply the academic rules and the academic like traditions, but then we try to do the things with much more practical way, and we try to implement the results as soon as possible, like testing them in practice, also without very strict and complicated research setups.
Yeah, that's quite interesting. And you have got funding from Ministry of Education and Culture and Academy of Finland, which are competitive grants, and they are quite basic research. I don't know if there's many researchers from applied universities that are actually getting these grants and basic kind of for quite basic research. So how do you see this one? Is there many other researchers actually applying even for those from applied universities?
And not so many. I think traditionally people are also a bit afraid of these grants because they are so competitive and so few people get these grants. So many don't even try to apply. But it's also about the culture. In University of Applied Sciences, many people think that, okay, we are out of this game. But in my lab, we try to combine the best parts of the academic world and the applied world. And I think my main advantage in these grant applications has been the practical point of view and the implementation point of view. I try to think about that very carefully in these applications. I think when doing my PhD, I was applying funding only my own ideas in my mind, without having too much discussions with people from healthcare or people who really would implement the things. But now in this current position, I'm having a lot of discussion with other people who are actually using the data or the results or who would benefit from the research. And I think that's the main difference in my previous position and the main advantage I have had.
So would you actually recommend more researchers to do the same way, that maybe be in the applied university, maybe have a collaboration, more network to industry, to healthcare, and kind of make the research projects that they are good quality research, but can be put into practice really fast, and actually that industry can also benefit? Would that be your tip for some other researchers?
Yeah, kind of. Collaboration and wide collaboration network is very important. But I think before that, even more important thing is that you approach your research question very widely and with a very wide perspective. It's very important for yourself that you recognize the importance of your work, and many times we don't do that. I think one example is that, or you can see that in in what people write in the conclusions of their papers. As a basic researchers, we are very, very careful in what we write in these conclusions. But I have been trying to be much more have much more courage to suggest things, kind of implement the data or tell what I think or what I think would be the best action points that arise from this data. But many times we just end our paper that more research is needed. Well, that might be true, but also you are accountable for people and you are using public funding to do these research setups, and if you cannot do those conclusions or if you cannot suggest like practical things what we should be doing next, then nobody can. And it means that they won't grant you another 500,000 euros to do the same thing if you cannot implement the data that you have collected. So having, maybe when applying the grant, you can have your first or the main paper conclusion in your mind. What will you write there? What will you suggest based on this data? Of course, I understand. If you run a randomized controlled trial, of course you have the primary research question and you have the power calculation or sample size calculations for that, and you cannot do whatever with the data. You really need to stick with the plan. But there are many cases where you should be able to interpret the data and suggest things based on the data you have collected. not only end up in saying that, okay, more research is needed.
So how do you come up with your research ideas to your project? Like, do you have some kind of systemic method how you approach the planning of a research project, or does it happen in a way that you don't really know how you came up with the idea and how did this form in your back of your mind?
It's a very important point, and I'm sorry to say that I don't have a systematic way of thinking about the research ideas, but I think the main thing here is to keep up with the literature, know the big picture, where the field is going, but also you need to think about the big problems. I think one obstacle in grant writing is that you have so focused research question that it is an excuse for you to escape the large problems in the society, and and it's a challenge because you only have the limited grants, and you need to be very strict that you have enough sample size and very very focused research questions. But on the other hand, you shouldn't escape the large problems in the society. You should do your part and do your best to answer these problems. And I think that's kind of the I try to think about the real challenges and what is really needed in the society. And many times we are so deep in our own specific field that we might forget what's going on out there. And coming up from the deepness of your own specific field, getting a little bit broader view can sometimes give you very good ideas. And one thing I have got very, very fascinated about, many times we write in the discussion or introduction that we try to give data and knowledge to support political decision making. But that's not reality. We don't. Well, the political decision makers very rarely can comprehend or digest so much research data we are giving them. But there are some specific things for what we can provide data and so I'm very interested in doing research that would really support political decision making. And now I'm very happy that I got a grant to study the effects of free fair public transport on children's physical activity, because in Mikkeli, where our lab is, the city of Mikkeli has provided this free fare ticket for all primary school children, and there has been a lot of debate around this topic. And there's no research data, only word against word. And now we got a very good grant to do research on this, and we have the first results ready. And the political decision makers have been very happy about this. They have been contacting me a lot to get the results. And now they will start discussions about broadening this to secondary school students. And now we really have the data, what's going on there, and they are very happy. And we have both qualitative and quantitative data, and the qualitative data is actually very very beneficial in this case. We know what children themselves think about this thing, and also what the parents are thinking. So
yeah,
this is one case, but this is something which fascinates me a lot. I would like to learn more about this implementation science and how to solve real world problems with research.
So yeah, I think this is a really good example, this study, that it's a very practical problem, that what is the children's physical activity? Are they more active when they get free bus tickets that they can go to any of their hobbies or not? But how was your, when you were making this idea, when you were making this grant proposal? This is very practical, and probably many other applications were not as practical. This, could you share us your thoughts when you were applying for this grant?
Yeah, I was actually participating in a congress, like a Finnish Physical Activity Society Congress, where there was discussion about children's daily physical activity. I don't exactly remember the talk that I was when I got the idea, but anyway, one point there was that we have very little data or experience about the effects of political decision making on children's physical activity. You have interventions at the individual level, at the school level, many at the school level or family level. We know something about the environment; those are mostly observational, but we know very little about this political decision making. And at the same time, I got an email. It was maybe indirectly linked to this Mikkeli free bus experiment, and then somehow the monkey in my head started to realize what to do, and I got this idea. I had maybe only 1 month to the deadline. Then I sent a message to my boss that, what do you think? Should I apply? And she replied right away that for sure this is a very good idea. And then I started to go through the literature, and actually before that I tried to find the best collaborators for this. I thought about the methods that I would use, and then I called to a couple of collaborators who had been using these methods, and they were in right away. And that's about how it went. Then we just decided who will write and what, and that was pretty much it. Of course, I needed to contact the city representatives for whether we will be able to collect data and what they think about this idea and so on. So, but it was pretty fast, actually, from the idea to the actual proposal.
Yeah, no, that's very interesting, and I think this your other project, Optimus. The name is a randomized control trial to influence sustained glycemic control by reducing muscle inactivity time in middle-aged and older office workers with type 2 diabetes. So in a way that you have RCT setup, you are measuring glycemic control, and there's muscle activity, but then it's type 2 diabetes people in the office. So it's kind of combining really the basic research, but also giving like really practical tips that if you have type 2 diabetes, this will help. So what could you share about this project?
Yeah, this project got started I was visiting Baker Heart and Diabetes Institute in Melbourne a couple of years ago, and we have been doing some collaboration with David Dunstan, Neville Owen, and Genevieve Healy. And well, my main advantage is like the EMG technology I've been using, and I've been trying to apply that to the field of muscle or sedentary behavior. And of course, we need to again thank for Taija Finni, who has kind of invented this methodology together with Myontech technology. But the idea got started there. Baker Heart and Diabetes Institute, they are running very high quality RCTs, and they have recognized that type 2 diabetic people are the ones who have the potential to benefit from breaking up sitting. Maybe even more as compared to those with good glycemic control. And so that's a target group. which has the potential to benefit. And then we have the EMG technology, which can capture even the small movements. And the main kind of catch or the novelty in this project is that we will give these people a portable pedal machine. And the point, kind of the advertisement or the point for this proposal that was that could you reduce the risks of sitting while sitting down? So activating your muscles while sitting. So as an intervention, it's very simple, but as an idea, it's something new. Usually the intervention require you to stand up or move around, away from your desk, which is not very feasible with your work. Well, it can be very feasible, but we will like to test this idea that what if you could reduce the risks while sitting? So I think that's, and then we have technology that can capture this during sitting. Accelerometers have some challenges in capturing movements during sitting, but with EMG we can really capture the small movements, and that was kind of the scientific novelty. Of course, we have a large trial with a lot of people and good target group and outcomes and things like that, and the best collaborators ever, because David Dunstan and Neville Owen and Jim Healy have helped a lot, and I have got a lot of material and ideas from them, so couldn't have managed without them.